All right. Thanks everybody for joining the afternoon session of the ICT4Good Asia workshop. You know, I see you in the morning, I see you in the afternoon, so I'm very glad that you come back. This second keynote speech session will be presented by our very brilliant scholar, practitioner, Pablo Aragon. So here is my brief introduction about Pablo. Pablo is a research scientist at the Wikimedia Foundation, where he focuses on content integrity and resilience to disinformation in Wikipedia and other free knowledge projects. He is interested in computational social science and social computing through interdisciplinary and participatory approaches to characterize and facilitate participation, deliberation, and collaboration in online platforms. Pablo is also an adjunct professor at 2 universities based in Barcelona, Spain. He actively contributes to projects at the intersection of data, technology, and democracy, and serves as a board member of Decidim, the free open source platform for participatory democracy. Decidim was built in Spain at first, but now has been used widely in Europe. I know Decidim recently has been implemented in other regions such as Japan and Mexico. I really look forward to hearing from Pablo to share the journey to building and running Decidim. So Pablo, please, your turn.
Okay, so thank you very much for the invitation. It's very exciting to be here today, this morning in Barcelona, this afternoon in Singapore, in the ICT4Good workshop in Asia. So I guess that you can see my slides, right? Yeah, okay, great. So I'm going, as said by Wei, I'm going to present Decidim, Technopolitical Networks for Participatory Democracy. So this is a study that was done while doing my PhD at the Universitat Pompeu Fabra, where I'm working now as adjunct professor, while my main affiliation is I hold up a position in the Wikimedia Foundation. And also this work has been done in collaboration with the project Decidim that I will present from a research perspective and then to a practitioner perspective as well, where I've been serving in areas related to research and data, and currently as a member of the board. So the work I'm presenting, and it was part of my PhD research, is inspired by the notion of the platform society. So we live surrounded by platforms. We publish and interact, we post on Facebook, we share messages in platforms like WhatsApp, like TikTok, microposts on Twitter, photos on Instagram, videos on YouTube. So in some way, platforms have become central on the web. In fact, platforms have transformed that original idea of the World Wide Web based on interlinked resources distributed all over the internet by creating these centers of attention, these centers of participation that platforms are playing that role on the current internet. And at the same time, in recent years, we are witnessing the rise in popularity of a specific type of platforms, which are the civic technologies, and that you have been reviewing during this workshop. So these platforms are information and communication technologies that are aimed to scale up citizen participation to promote new forms of democratic governance. For instance, platforms for online petitions, or platforms for citizen debates, citizen assemblies, platforms for participatory budgeting, for open data and accountability. So we are seeing that there is a trend in the use of these platforms for these new forms of governance, of democratic governance. However, as it was explained by Joseph Van Dijk and colleagues in their book, The Platform Society, platforms are not only technological tools that allow people to do things online. The logic and the logistics are more about facilitating. They actually shape the way we live and how society is organized, since a very important part of our lives are currently being mediated by these platforms. How these platforms are defined and the design of the platforms and the affordances of these platforms are shaping somehow part of our current lives. So this was the main these affordances effective might have a social and political consequence. So obviously the approach for doing that was to use computational statistical methods for observational studies with data that was open and without the awareness of participants and without manipulating the environment. So there was a constraint since the experimentation with real participants that are using this platform for co-creating public policies for their living conditions was going to be ethically problematic. So that was the reason of using a non-invasive experimentation. So trying to observe when some interventions were done in those platforms and trying to examine what was the result of those interventions. So for my research, I focused on 3 of them. One was Meneame, which was kind of a Spanish Reddit that became very popular for the 50M movement. Another platform was City de Madrid, which was the platform launched by the City of Madrid for direct democracy, including participatory budgeting, online petitions, and consultations. But the one I'm going to present today is the case of the city in Barcelona, and I will give some details about this platform afterwards. And in particular, I was interested in a research question around, which was a question from the team of that project, about how to effectively introduce discussions in online petitions. Okay. So this was, as I say, is a question that emerged from the team of the city in Barcelona, but it was also a question that appeared in the research literature, because previous research in online petition platforms from local institutions were reporting very little success about discussion dynamics. So some studies in the United Kingdom's councils, there was some research proving that most users, they don't visually identify that there was a possibility to discuss those petitions, and there were just a very few comments around them. Also another study around focus on local platforms for places in Germany, Scotland, and Norway. They also conclude that petition forums were barely used. So there was like a very little use of this possibility, of this feature. Even that it was deployed, there was an interest, or at least a possibility to discuss these online petitions as ideas for public policies. Very few citizens were using this possibility. Okay, so the case study that I'm going to present is the city in Barcelona. And I will give more details afterwards, but the city in Barcelona is like the city participatory democracy platform that is able to host multiple processes for state city planning, citizen initiatives, and other forms of democratic governance. At the same time, is the largest free open source software launched by the city of Barcelona, and is an illustrative example of a public infrastructure for the commons for sovereignty using public funding. And as I will also explain in the practitioner part of the talk, the second part, is co-designed by an open and collaborative community, which is also an ecosystem that includes small and medium-sized business organizations, but also citizens, activists, designers, and so on. So in the case of the city of Barcelona, just for give you some examples, these are some data that I think was taken last year. Now it changed because there has been participatory budgeting has increased, but yeah, the platform has like thousands of participants with many different processes running up with many assemblies, thousands of proposals that have been sharing the platform with different debates around the city. And the main idea of the city in Barcelona was launched in 2016 for a specific purpose. So in Catalonia, every new local government is aimed to create a municipal action plan, which is the plan that the strategic plan that this new government will have to implement, and is expected to include practices of citizen participation. So the city in Barcelona was originally created to provide support and to make it this to scale up participation through the use of technology. So at that time, there was a process over 3 months in which there were petitions, proposals that were created by the city council, which were the ones from the program of the political party that won the elections. But then over these 3 months, citizens were invited to create new proposals, to discuss the existing ones, to support them. And finally, well, these are the numbers. Like also there was offline meetings in which citizens, they were able to discuss the proposals that appear in the platform, also discuss ideas to then share those ideas in the platforms. And in the end, like there were like thousands of citizens of Barcelona engaged in this process, both offline and online. Just to provide you with these numbers. So there was like over 10,000 proposals from either the city council, Ayuntamiento, some from offline meetings, citas presenciales, some from regular citizens in the platform, and also from organizations with special accounts that related to civic organizations. As we can see, like more than 62% of the proposals were accepted. Most of the ones that belong to the city council that came already from a previous participatory process by that political party have a high rate of acceptances. Also, the ones of online meetings and organizations will help us to imagine that when people were meeting together, either in an organization or in an offline meeting, they have higher chances to be accepted rather than when there were ideas created in an individual manner. And then we were able to examine like how these were implemented in different areas, like in good living, global justice, plural economy, good government of ecological transition. So, well, as I say, this was the idea of creating this process through the use of technology. But at the same time, there was an interest in not only creating a process in which citizens were creating proposals and supporting to be implemented, but also to discuss them. So we collected a data set with over 10,000 petitions and over 18,000 comments between these 3 months, between February and April 2016. The main idea about this discussion of comments, it was like there was like an internal debate within the team of the city in Barcelona around how to promote deliberative practices of decision-making around citizens. So there was an interest to promote this practice of discussion that they were not seen so effective in previous platforms. So there was a review of how these forums for petitions were done. And what we found is like there were 2 different approaches. One of them was to use pros and contras. So users are able to add arguments in favor or against the proposal, and typically like showing them in 2 columns and being able to vote them and rate them. So that facilitates decision making, since users can see what are the best arguments and counter-arguments to that idea. But also some other platforms, they were using like threaded discussions, like the one in Reddit. So being able to create replies to the proposal, replies to the replies, replies to the sub-replies, etc. So creating threads as done in platforms like Reddit to engage users in discussion. So not only to promote these practices of publishing and supporting and creating a market of attention, but also to engage citizens in a citizen debate. So finally, what was implemented in the city in Barcelona was an hybrid approach between both of them. So conversation threading was approach, like a forum style, but also there was for the first level comments, so comments directly in response to the proposal. Users were able to say whether it was positive, so it was a supporting argument, it was negative, an opposing argument, or if it was neutral. So this is an example. This was a proposal for creating local energy company that actually was implemented some years ago. And there was some users creating pro arguments or contra arguments, and then being able to have this discussion within those arguments. So the interesting part from a research perspective is that since we are now having those comments and those comments after a discussion, then we are able to create threads of discussion and model as a network. In particular, model them as a tree network. So we are able to model the reactions to these petition comments as discussion cascades. Like imagine this is the proposal, so we are able to see all these comments, whether they are positive or negative, and these positive comments and these negative comments, we are able to examine the different kind of cascades of comments, the structure of those cascades, to evaluate deliberative practices within the platform. And for doing that, well, there is like a lot of literature around the structural properties of online discussion threads. If this is a comment and a sub-comments, sub-comments, etc., we can examine the size of the cascade, the width, which is the maximum number of messages at any reply level, or the depth, like how many, what is the maximum depth achieved between the strengths of arguments between users. And also, if the message authorship is known, we can even consider how many users were involved in the discussion. And the reason of using this kind of metrics is that these metrics, in some studies led by colleagues like Sandra Gonzalez Bailón, they saw that these network-based characteristics can help us to capture necessary conditions for deliberation in online discussions. So this is based on an assumption that for deliberation to take place, there are different components. One of them is representation, so being many people involved in the discussion. At the same time, the argumentation, so being like a rich exchange of ideas within the discussion. So if we are thinking about a discussion thread, we can imagine like a thread with high level of width has a lot of representation, while a thread with a lot of depth has a high level of argumentation. So ideally, we want to look for threads that are involving many users with a lot of exchange of ideas. So for capture both width and depth, we can use metrics like the H index. So the H index is, if we have this kind of network, like the one we saw before, we examine for each level, which is the maximum level that has as many comments as the level. So in the first level, in this example, we have 9 comments. In the second level, we have 9 comments as well. In the third level, we have 6 comments, but in the fourth level, we have less than 4 comments. So the H index of this discussion tree will be 3. So it's a very basic metric that helps us to capture the complexity of the structure of the thread. Okay. So, well, we collected the data set with all the discussion cascade created to all the comments to proposals in the city in Barcelona during that process. There was some that the original message was positive, or some other was negative, and some other was neutral. And what we observed is like most of them, they were neutral, maybe because they wanted to expose their alignment to the idea, or because they even maybe did not identify that feature. So in the end, only a very small fraction, like the 5% of comments, were negative. Okay, but interestingly, those negative comments, they were the ones that created the larger cascades. So there were very few comments, around 5%, but they were able to create much larger discussions. Okay, so this is in terms of the size of the cascade. But if we examine not only the size, but we compare the size with the width, the depth, and the H index, what we found is like when a comment did not trigger a discussion cascade, there was a high probability that that comment was either neutral or positive. So there was a comment that was not showing some alignment to the idea, or it was just reinforcing the idea, it was not creating a cascade. But when there was a negative comment, that was creating some discussion and some deliberation practices around decision making. And if we just remove the neutral ones to remove the hypothesis that maybe was not identified by citizens, if we examine the polar discussions, the one originated by positive and negative comments, what we found by doing some evaluation and doing some addressing the imbalance between positive and negatives for sure, by doing bootstrapping, what we found certainly is like negative comments, they were more able to create discussion cascade and creating those practices. So this original idea about the cities of the team of the city in Barcelona on how to create a platform that was able to promote those discussions around the petitions, it seemed that this hybrid approach was more effective than the ones in the past that were either just showing conversation threading or just showing positive and negative. So combining both was for us to examine this. So the main question was how to effectively introduce discussion in online petition platforms. So what we found is like this deliberative platform design of the city in Barcelona, allows citizens to discuss neutral and positive and negative comments. So even that very few comments were negative, these were the ones that were very successful in engaging citizens in that discussion. And well, this is consistent with the basic of cognitive dissonance. So if there was someone proposing ideas opposing the main content of the proposal, it was expected that the author was going to reply back to that, and that create different communities to discuss around that. Okay, so well, the lessons that we learned from this research, this is one example of the research I was doing at the time during my PhD, is like, well, first you need to compare platforms. So in this case, I only use Barcelona, but if someone is interested, we can discuss on how to compare these dynamics over different platforms and even different instances of the same technology, like the city in different cities, and being able to compare dynamics. But essentially, the value of building a community that includes developers of these platforms with researchers and activists, and in my case, in the role of a researcher, how to bring those research questions that emerge from the activists, emerge from the developers, and how to use this computational approaches to give in return some results around those questions. And this is the part from the research and the evaluation of how the relevance of the impact of the design into the dynamics. So even in Barcelona, there was some high level of awareness of the non-neutrality of technology, but this kind of research helped us to also to examine how important is to design technology in a critical manner, to being able to understand if these platforms are for political participation, what are the political and social impact or consequences of designing technology in one way or the other. And this is the part of the essence of the platform that I was presented with, is the CDIM. That, as I say, well, the CDIM is an open source participatory democracy platform for citizens and organizations. So the main idea of this platform, that is the one that is the technology that's being used in Barcelona, is trying to understand, like, if we consider our political life in different axes, like the centralized and decentralized, public and private. We can see in the centralized side, for the public, we have the state, the city councils. For the private, we have these big corporations, but also we are observing now much more decentralized forms, like the sharing economy capitalism in the private side, but also the common solidarity economic cooperatives in the public common side. So ideally, if we as citizens are in the middle, the main purpose of the CDIM is trying to build an infrastructure that allows us to connect citizens with city councils and also these organizations. And as you commented in the beginning, this is a platform that is started in Barcelona, but is now being used in many other cities, like many cities in France, Helsinki, in Italy, in Belgium, but also out of Europe, like New York City, Mexico City, cities in Japan, in Argentina, but also in different regions, and regions or even super regions, like the European is the platform that is being used now by the European Union for their participatory processes, but also for civic organizations like Greenpeace or different universities in Europe. So just to explain what are the main principles of this platform, this is the one that I presented in the research part. Like, this is a platform that to provide some understanding, we always present these 3 layers of the projects. So it's a platform to enable democracy in a political level. So the political level, it will be a specific platform for co-decision. In the case of Barcelona, it's decidim.barcelona, but this other platform that exists in other cities will be the decision platform of Helsinki, of the one of New York, the one of Mexico City. There's the technical layer, which is the technology, which is the factory, is the technological code that provides that infrastructure. And finally, there is the techno-political layer, which is the community, which is the one that co-design and take decisions around how this platform should be taken, and that incorporates researchers for informed decision making. And this community is called the decision community or the meta decision. So if we focus in the, as I say, in the political layer, so the political layer, if you go to decidim.barcelona, you will find this, you will find the platform, in this case of Barcelona. This is a screenshot I took yesterday. So now they are discussing, this is a specific participatory process to decide some roles in the city. So this is the political side, like how to take political decisions among citizens. And well, at this moment, the one in Barcelona, these are the updated numbers. So it has been run like over 70 participatory process with over 70 councils that are discussing there as well, and different initiatives that are being posed by the citizenry to create new policies. That was the political layer. If we focus on a technical one, the technical one, as I say, is the code. So the code is hosted on GitHub. It's a code that is being developed open source and with a free license. And if you go on GitHub, you can see all the different implementations on Wrapup Rails that allow to include features like proposals, like votings, results, accountability, participatory text, newsletters, surveys. So being able to create these different features within the platform, like you are able to create as many spaces as needed or as many processes are needed, and then to populate them with all these existing features, like having a blog or having participatory budgeting or having participatory budgeting and proposals. So being able to create a puzzle of participation, which is the main idea. So trying to consider out the different forms of participation that can occur in this kind of platform, like proposing, meeting, deliberating, deciding, and monitoring also accountability, and being able to deploy in each process or in each assembly all the features that are needed for those processes. And one of them that I mentioned with this meeting is quite relevant because it's one of the main features was deployed, and it's this idea, trying to consider that this is like when we're building digital platforms, like the one of the example of the city, are not supposed to create only new forms of governance, but also to reinforce the existing participatory dynamics that exist in our cities, in our regions. So this is one of the first features that was deployed. We was able how to create like a map and a calendar with the meetings in which the existing committees and the cities were able to gather, discuss ideas to be then dumped into the platform, or to discuss at the same time ideas that were already in that platform. So create like an hybrid approach of the offline and online dynamics, and not to replace the dynamics of the city, of the region, of the civic organization with technology. So being able to reinforce the offline and the online settings. As I say, this is the code is open source, and actually it's free. It has a free license, FERO General Public License 3.0, which is a license that make the code available to anyone, but at the same time, any new development based on the setting has to be has to keep this license. So it's a way of making public the code, but at the same time to guarantee that new developments are not going to be privatized. So it's a public common that cannot get privatized, and there is a lot of this is a very strong political statement from the team and from the community from the early beginning. But something that maybe is not said when we're talking about civic technologies is like when we're using licenses, these kind of licenses are for the code, but we cannot use this kind of license for the practice. So when we are developing this platform and using free license, we cannot guarantee that technology for democracy or for citizen participation can be used for a non-democratic purposes. And actually, citizen participation per se doesn't need to be democratic. Like we can see many kind of political practices that are participatory, based in non-democratic or not fair or not aligned with justice principles. So what we build in the CITIM is something that is called the social contract. So anyone is able to use the code. according to the free license, but also there is a social contract that gives some principles, some guarantees around collaboration, transparency, traceability, integrity, privacy and security. So there is the association, the DCDM association that we built to govern the code that promotes the adherence of organizations and citizens to this social contract to follow these principles. And if they are done, if they are fulfilled, those instances of the CDM will be recognized as following the social contract and the best practice. And finally, the last layer is the technopolitical one. So this relates to what I was presented in the research side. So as I saw the way you design technology, for instance, this very specific example of how you create comments into petitions might trigger some forms, some dynamics or some political practices of the other. So in the end, it's very relevant to consider the design of these platforms. And also, if we are designing technology for citizen participation, it's important to rethink who are designing those technologies, because in the end, if we are creating artifacts of participation that are not participated, the people who are in the design team or in the core team are going to decide which forms of participation might exist, in which way, and which other forms of participation might not exist. So the idea, the last layer, the technological layer, the meta-deciding community, is trying to promote a radical form of democracy. So in the same way that the code allows to do a participatory setting for the political layer, we need to also open participation in the way we design the platform. And for doing so, the meta-decidim is also an instance. So the community use their own instance of the decidim for starting new processes, for new features, for bugs, for supports, also for political discussions around how the code should be used. So this is a screenshot I also took last night, some hours ago, about a new process that started in the platform to redesign the CDM. So there was like almost now 4 years of the project existing, and there has been identified some needs for improvement. So so there was an interest to create a participatory process for the community to decide how this artifact for political participation should be done. And this is not something that just came from the team, but this is something that appeared in our last meeting. So some weeks ago, we have the CDM Fest, the annual conference, and part of the discussions we were having during the festival is this needs for improvement around the platform in terms of design. And there was like these discussions that promote us and motivate us to create a new process to rethink the future of the project in terms of design. So it's a way of how to consider like all these different layers and how to think in between research and practitioner around the value of collaboration between researchers, practitioners, activists, designers to create in a democratic way the platforms or that are going to become artifacts for political participation. So, well, with that, I think I give like an overview of the research and the project done around the CDM in these recent years. And I think it took like half an hour, so I will have some more time for. Thank you.
Thank you, Pablo. Thank you. Right. You give us a talk that perfectly combines the two identities you possess. Right? First part of the talk is very research heavy and has lots of research insights, cutting edge, I would say, data science kind of research seen in the first part of the talk. The second part of the talk really is what I hope to hear from you, how you build Decidim not just as a platform, but also first linked to the political structure over there in the Spanish cities, as well as, building a community, the techno-political layer of this project or of this practice that really, I think, contributes to the long-lasting effects or influences of this platform. So I really appreciate this very comprehensive talk to show clearly your scholar identity and practitioner identity. So I think we have quite a few questions in the chat. I also saw a hand raised Am I right? Okay. Anyway, I'll continue just inviting everybody to ask questions. We are such a small group of people. Please feel safe and free to ask any questions. Because Dong Tao's time is really late over there. I will invite Dong Tao is like midnight in California, right? So I will let Dong Tao ask the first question, so then he can probably go rest. Right, please, Dong Tao, what's your question?
Thank you, Wei. That's very nice of you. Thank you, Pablo, for a very informative presentation. I'm very new to this topic, but this is very interesting to me. I have a question. It seems the civic technologists in Europe or in your country have done a lot of good work, fantastic work, very good technology. Do you have the information about how much this civic tech work improved public satisfaction or public approval rate of the government?
Okay. Wow, that's an excellent question. I don't have the data around public satisfaction. I have some other data that might relate to the impact of those technologies somehow. And that also relates to another question in the chat around successful cases. So in the case of this in Barcelona, there was the first time that was like a massive amount for this first participatory process, like the PAM 2016-2019, that there were thousands of ideas that then become public interventions, like creating new roles, creating civic centers, or creating new programs and so on. And it was not only the first time that that was done in a massive way, but also the first time that that was monitored. And that was very relevant because it was monitored in real time. So anyone was able to go into the platform and to see like all the public policies or intervention, but public action that has to be run by the council, but not only what were they about, but also to examine what was the source of that public action. So it was able to see what were the proposals that motivate that action, what was the rate of the number of supports, the number of comments by all these proposals, whether they were discussing some meetings, and at the same time, the implementation in real life of these actions. If they were already implemented, they were in their 50%, 60%, or whatever, it was updated regularly. So for me, one of the most relevant things is like the final level of implementation of these public actions was around the I think it was around the 90%. I don't remember the exact number, but usually in Barcelona, like the level of implementation of this public action in the past were always 100%. So for me, that was very relevant because it was the first time that the number was true, that there was like accountability and there was able to examine whether these actions were a motivation by either citizens, the council, organizations, and also what was the level of implementation and be able to evaluate. So in the end, it became like a very helpful tool for the councils, and in this case, Barcelona, to show how their public actions were being implemented and were legitimate by the citizens and other political actors in the city. So I think in that level, it helped. Also, the continuous use of the platforms, because your question was more focused on satisfaction. So this year was launched, well, actually last year, but then it was postponed because of the COVID pandemic. It was launched participatory budgeting for the first time in the city, and the rates of participation suddenly increased. So that helps to also to understand like an important level of satisfaction when there were like processes about the transformation of our city. With Indian is something that we sometimes forgot in the area of civic technology. So there is always an interest in to understand civic technologies from the side of participation, to promote participation, which obviously is interesting. Like this is part of the goal of that, to scale up participation. But in the end, those are political artifacts. So or understanding its politics is to transform our society, to transform our realities. So what we were observing is like those processes that were more easily identified to create public policies or to transform our realities, they were showing higher levels of participation. So in the end, that can be also translated into higher levels of engagement and satisfaction among citizens and in Barcelona network over time.
Thanks, Pablo. I hope that answers your question, Dongtao, right? Initiatives, right, or innovations like Decidim really is not just about promoting participation from citizens. It's also, I agree with Pablo, 100%. It's an innovative form of governance, right? It should also benefit the other side of the game, right? Those who hear from the participants and implement their advices, right? So this platform needs to be able to help the political institutions to do their job as well, right? Cannot be just a channel to voice opinions or citizens' concerns. It needs to somehow make the governance or incorporation of these voices more efficient. Thank you, Pablo, for that great answer. I think we also have a question from Chen Zhuo, right? I think the question is more or less similar, right, to Dongtao's question. It also relates to the actual effectiveness, maybe, of deliberation. So Chen Zhuo asked, he would like to know more about the successful cases that turn into real actions. How many of them are from the active deliberations? He is asking this question because he's not sure about to what extent opposing opinions can be coordinated online and become a collective force for change. Though they can certainly lead to more active action discussions. So I guess his question is about, you know, just now in your research, you presented how disagreements, right, or negative, so-called negative comments actually contribute to more active discussions. But when we have disagreements, it also means that it's hard to reach consensus and come up with an action plan, right? And turn the action plan into actual policies. So I guess he's asking, how do you see from your experiences, how some of these active and highly so-called debatable discussions and participation on Decidim would really turn into something actionable by maybe the government and the authorities. So what might be some of the examples of this kind of procedure, right?
Okay, well, this is also a great question. And actually it's very complex to give like a very precise answer. First, because it's about successful cases. So first we need to think about what is our definition of our approach to success. So that relates somehow with what I said before, like many times we're talking about success in civic technologies or success in participatory dynamics. We're talking about how to measure success in terms of number of actions that were implemented, number of citizens that were involved. And partially, and there was like an excellent work done by a MIT researcher at Hargrave, when he was in MIT doing his PhD. That also inspired me when I was in my PhD, around how CivicTech is inspired by this notion of engagement from Silicon Valley platforms. But this is not only platforms to participate, but platform to transform. So maybe success is not so much oriented around these typical metrics of engagement, like being addicted to participation, but how these platforms might activate like our level of political efficacy and how we feel that we have transformed society and how they transform ourselves. Okay, so when I think about successful cases, there was a very good example in that first process of the city in Barcelona that was about, there was a discussions about main roads in the city of Barcelona, that they had a lot of traffic and they were asking for some interventions to reduce traffic. And there were like different requests from different neighborhoods. And at some point, committees for different neighborhoods start to discuss between themselves. So there was one committee that was asking for the road to be covered, for having no noise. The others were also asking for another kind of intervention, and they start to discuss because some of them, they were saying like, that road was created because of the Olympic Games in 1992, and that road somehow was like a scar in the neighborhood, while in the other case, that road already exists because it was one of the main roads to enter into the city of Barcelona, and then houses will build around it. So even that it was a similar situation, like there was a historical background that might be more conflicted for the other. So for me, having citizens that they didn't know each other discussing about the legitimacy of their request and to being exposed to different realities, for me, this is a high level of success. So this is part of, and those counter argumentations has a lot of political value, which was part of the inspiration of that. Another example is there was like a very popular proposal that finally was partially implemented around the regulation of the rental market, because as many cities nowadays, like housing is not affordable. And there was one of the first comment was negative, saying like, okay, this is not our problem. If you don't have money to pay a house in this neighborhood, you should move to another neighborhood. And then there were reactions to that comment saying like, okay, I've been living in this neighborhood for over 40 years and I'm not living because I don't have money for living here. It's not a problem of my economical possibilities. It's a problem of speculation. Like I'm being kicked out by some forces. So for me, this also was kind of success, like being exposed to different opinions. It was a very successful political experience. At the same time, I should say that it was the first process. So maybe there might be some bias around civility of comments. So at that time, there were no trolls or there was not hate speech in the platform. And somehow it never reached those levels. So that's the reason why counter-argumentation, I consider a success in this case. So if we reach some level of troll or misbehavior, I agree that then those successful cases might be different. And this is also part of the discussions that are being surrounded by the community. Like we are aware that trolls will arrive eventually, and it will be important to see like how to prevent misbehavior and harassment in those discussion dynamics before they emerge. But for the moment, I think being exposed for different realities, citizen realities, from a political perspective are very successful experiences.
Thanks, Pablo. The answer, I love the answer. For all deliberation, so-called researchers and practitioners, right? We have the same hope, right? It's a long-term project. It's not just about coming up with solutions to certain problems, right? It's also a kind of a civic education, right? To educate citizens the complexity of policy making, right? What you want from the government might be totally not what other people want, right, from the government. Through this kind of direct engagement with each other on the very specific policy issues, right? They can realize there are different realities policy has to address. So when the policy really comes out, right, no matter which version it is, maybe they at least understand the motivations behind that policy making a little better, right? So I really love that that answer. Well, but can I take the advantage of being a moderator to add on one of part of your answers, right? So you said on this decision there were not a lot of incivility or trolling or misbehaviors, right? I was just wondering how you managed to do that. In other more popular platforms, social media platforms, right? It's quite common to see trolling, right? If not, hate speech, but trolling is very common. So how did you guys manage to control the incivility seen on your platform? Did you like ban people? Did you kick people out if they misbehave?
Wow, good question. This was not something done intentionally, I should say. So this high level of civility, it just emerged. I think just because it was about city public policy, maybe was not so much of interest for possible trolls, so they were not interpeeled. I should say that also there is a negative interpretation of that around the community and the team. Like, and this is it might sound strange, but having trolls is also an indicator of success. So typically trolls arrive when they feel that they can damage something that is valuable. So at the same time, there is like mixed feelings about that. Like in the case of Barcelona, it was very satisfactory to feel that there was civility, but at the same time it was about like whether we need to be more impactful, because if trolls haven't arrived, it's because we're not getting the level of impact that we should go for. But obviously there are pros and cons. But I should say, for another example, in the platform Madrid, in the city of Madrid, they had trolls in the first week, so massively they came and they start to post it was like some kind like the Spanish 4chan platform that just organized themselves to ask for a citizen initiative to create a statue in the center of Madrid with the logo of that forum. So that was easily moderated by the admins. But the interesting part is like, since these platforms are leaving traces around the people who are participating, not in terms of their personal identities, but in terms of who are they replying to. Then by doing some very basic network analysis, it was very able to see like the people who participated in the action, that was an isolated cluster. So it helped us to understand whether this was like some kind of organic ways of participation, or it was like a trolling Goliardic action. And at the same time, like using technology, create those traces, create those data that is very useful then to balance and to identify patterns of misbehavior.
Okay, thanks for sharing some of your colleagues' view that you guys actually want to see trolls as an indicator of the activeness of participation. I saw two more questions in the chat box. I think both are about your research. Kokia was asking where she can find publications regarding your deliberation cascades study, right? And Chenzhuo was asking whether the data you used for that study is open source and accessible to other researchers.
Okay, yeah, well, the papers are in my webpage, elaragon.net, are available. The one specific about cascades in the team Barcelona was in the proceedings of SOCIM for 2017, and the paper is available on archive and open preprint, and also the data set is open release I release it on GitHub, so I can, if you go to my GitHub, I think it's called MetaDecidim, and there is this data set with a JSON structure for doing, and actually no, because after doing this process, we created a hackathon for trying to foster some data analysis around citizens to examine different patterns. So, and we found some interesting results that we never published, but they were fun for us. That was like to compare the language vocabulary between the proposals of the citizens and the proposals from the city council. So the one about the citizens, they were about real problematics. They were talking about traffic, about noise, about things. So they were like, by doing some very basic natural language processing, it was very able to see like citizens were talking about problematics, real problems, real concerns of citizens, while the ones from the city council were talking like their nouns by doing some post tagging, by extracting like the most relevant tokens in that vocabulary. It was about administrative jargon. So it was like about intervention, bureaucracy and stuff like that. So it was able to see like how different are the languages between citizens and bureaucrats. And that was able to examine just by having this data openly released. So yeah, it's available on my GitHub.
Thank you, Pablo. Kokia already managed to find your paper. Go check out Pablo's website and GitHub site for the data and the paper. not sure whether Simon intended to ask anything. You turn on your video.
I was going to ask exactly about the data as well. I think that would be quite interesting for us. The data for Barcelona, is it in Spanish or is it in Catalan? Sorry.
Actually, the platform of the team is available in different languages, and then every instance they set up the language that they want. The one of Barcelona is in Spanish and Catalan, and comments on that open dataset, some of them are in Catalan, some other are in Spanish. So
okay, I mean, that's going to be an interesting challenge. I guess Catalan is easier for me to read, but Spanish might be easier to automatically translate for us. But okay, yeah, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
All right, thank you guys for all the questions you threw at Pablo. Although I still have a lot more questions what I want to ask, but we have a schedule to follow. Pablo, thank you so much for your keynote speech. We learned so much from your talk and your year-long, many years long exercise and practice. So I hope that we are going to be able to continue working together in the future. We are now I think ready to shift to our practitioner panel, but as usual we will wait for a while. Maybe we'll start from 4:05 for people to maybe have a little break and also for audiences. Thank you, Pablo.
Thank you for the invitation. It was a real pleasure to be here. An honor, actually.
Great. Thanks. All right, I think we are ready to start. Before we start the practitioner panel in the workshop, I'd like to share again that this workshop is recorded. The video will be later edited and disseminated in our social media channels. So please pay attention to our follow-up emails requesting your approval of these video and video clips, right? So again, thank you for all our practitioner panelists to join this last session in the workshop. Well, what we are going to do in this panel is similar to what we have done in our morning sessions. So I am Wei Yu, I'm the moderator for this particular panel. I am going to introduce all of the speakers one by one. And after the introduction, I will invite each of you to present for roughly 10 minutes what you do at your site. What kind of ICT for good you work on in your institutions and organizations, right? After that, after all the speakers finish your sharing, we're going to do a group Q&A with all questions from the audiences. So without further ado, I guess I'm ready to introduce our first speaker. Our first speaker, Mr. Eyung, we are thrilled to have him join this practitioner panel. Mr. Ling is a director for the digital design and development team at the government digital service division in GovTech. One of his key roles is to understand the issues faced by other government agencies and propose how the various functional and cross-functional teams of GDS can come together to help. Eyung enjoys the process of emphasizing with users and ideating with stakeholders to create digital services that impact and add value to the society, bringing together the expertise of various IT and engineering professionals to benefit the lives of citizens is what he finds most satisfying about his job. So welcome, Eyung, for joining us. And now the floor is yours.
Hey, thank you so much, Wei. First of all, I must say it's a very proud and humble moment to be here. First time I'm in connect with this community, and I can't wait to have more interaction with here. Maybe allow me to just quickly share my slides, if you don't mind. May I know, can you all see my slides?
Yes.
Can
no problem.
Okay, I think I only have 4 very quick slides to share. So since this is the first interaction with this community, maybe let me handpick a few things that we do in government, right? Especially in GovTech Singapore, to hopefully to have an exchange of ideas. Maybe there are certain things I never imagined I can do it in a different way, and maybe there are certain things that also can trigger your organization to do the same. So allow me to quickly share. Now, first of all, let me start by saying that, you know, GovTech as an organization, we are the central ICT agency to look at the well-being of the country in terms of the ICT development. So one of the things, especially we all know that at this very period of time is really when COVID hit in, right? And even without COVID, right, we as a government, as we can imagine, there is no reason, there's no excuse for us not to deliver good, especially when a crisis is happening, right? And I say crisis, of course, I mean the COVID situation. So there will forever be demand for us to do good, forever be demand for us to deliver faster and faster, forever be demand for us to take care of every single group, right, of the residents, be it your citizens, you are foreigner here, you are vulnerable group, you are elderly, and so on and so forth. There is no excuse for us not to look after, you know, every one of them. So when all of these demand piles up, then we start to have an internal self-reflection. In fact, what I'm going to share here is something that we started this journey about 3 or 4 years back. And luckily, we started it slightly earlier before the COVID kicked in, so that when COVID kicked in, a lot of new requests start to come in. We just happen to have to have the opportunity to use all these tools that build up to handle the situation. And this is the tool, we call it a Singapore government tech stack. So just as a title, you can see here, is really about how can we build less, right? Of course, not the first instance, but along the way, build less, and we are able to deliver more good. Now, I just want to reinforce by saying that being a government agency is also not just about deliver fast and good. There is also a lot of other consideration like agility, productivity, quality, even compliance, even user experience, right? In any case, even when we are delivering fast and faster, there is no excuse for us. If let's say the quality of the work is subpar, and then we leak out citizens' data and so on and so forth. So all these things, all these requests came together and really set us on this very journey of build less, deliver more good. And the first thing in our mind is really about, when you look across the whole of government, because we have the visibility on what the different government agencies are doing, of course, all the different government agencies, they have one thing in common, which is to serve the people, right? So to serve the people, when they come up with more and more digital tools, and GovTech is a digital organization, right? We found that while they are very seemingly different effort within the government, but like it or not, a lot of them, actually there is a way for us to bootstrap it, extract it out, and build it as a common tech stack. And here we are. On the left side of the screen, regardless of which of the agency we are talking about, it can be the education sector, it can be the social sector, it can be the even Ministry of Finance, right? It can even be the PSA, right? Even the transport organizations. All of them, when they need to start a development, they will have to rely on certain, we call it a base layer. So here, when I list down like APEX, ships and heads, APEX is the API gateway. Ship and heads are basically the CICD, continuous integration and development environment. So basically what we are telling all the different agencies is that, yes, we know you all want to do good for the people here, but then here at the central government, we provide you with this platform. Once you onboard on the platform, the security is taken care of. A lot of other sort of automation, sort of implementation is already baked into the platform itself. Once you onboard the platform, it can easily save you at least 50% of the effort. And today, close to 50% of the agencies are already onboarded with the platform. Now come to the second pillar. When you talk about booking, right? You'll be surprised that it could be this morning, I'm talking to the MSF, the Social and Family Agency in Singapore. They talk about, yeah, we maybe need to book a marriage counselor, or we need to book, let's say, even a solemnizer. It can be a very happy thing, book a solemnizer. Then in the afternoon, I could be talking to the education sector. It says that, yeah, I have some counselor, I need to let people book for it. Then maybe in the evening, I'm talking to the Integrated Public Service Center. They say that, you know, a lot of the elderly, they can't even really travel all the way from West Coast to the IPSC center in our Tampines hub. So can we have a booking system for them to use? After that, they can just go through Zoom for the government counselor, social counselor to talk to him or her. So then we bootstrap something, we call it a booking SG. It's basically a booking system that the agencies or the domain owner just need to use the booking system and customize a little bit. And then immediately within, maybe you can cut short the development period from half a year to within 1 month. The agency can already start using this as a booking system. Percy is something, is really a new baby in this group, which is really about when government start to think about, like, you know, we talk about government need to build a personal relationship with the people, with the beneficiary, right? We need to push you with the right scheme, with the right information. That is what you needed. So when more and more different ministries start to embark on this journey, it started off as something very abstract, right? If we want to have a tech stack that can help the different organizations to be more personalized when they interact with the different users, groups, citizens, residents in this country, what will be the tech stack look like? So this is the tech stack talk about that. Now, Gather SG, I will talk a little bit into a bit more deeper because it aligns very much with today's theme, which is really about government, but we also need to do good to the citizens, right? we have gone past a stage of, there are so many of, in general, I just call it a case management need in the social service sector, right? Sometimes it's about, we need to make sure that the elderly will be willing to go and go forward for the vaccination. Sometimes it's simply about, because there are 100,000 vulnerable seniors staying alone in this country. So how can we better address to their need? How can we provide them an assisted living kind of environment? Sometimes it can be even as simple as just because we have we have some grocery voucher to the vulnerable group, and we just want to make sure that some of them who doesn't get it, the cases are properly handled. So today within the government, we also have a lightweight case management and coordination tech stack. I'll go in deeper about that slightly in a while. Last but not least, if you stay in Singapore during this period of time, you probably heard about a lot of things about this go where, that go where, must go where, Phuc go where, support go where, and so on and so forth. So today, I'm happy to share that what the public doesn't know is that go where, from the government perspective, is actually more than just a website. It's more than just an instance of implementation. It is, to us, we call it a distribution ops stack. It is a tech stack itself to support a distribution ops. From what the citizen can see about, there is a front end for people to key in the postal code, and then you can quickly go to where to collect the mask and sanitizer and so on and so forth, all the way to the back end. From the public officer point of view, they can just use a very easy to use form. They just enter a few collection point information by pressing one button. A poster will be generated, and that is exactly the poster. If some of you stay in HDB, you will know that those are the poster actually down there in the void deck. And the poster format is exactly compatible with the digital bulletin board. So actually, our colleagues from the TA can just load the poster there, right? So it is today. And the same initiative has been reused in 15 different COVID and whole government initiatives, right? Even in the election period, this system was also used by the citizen to query in terms of the queue time, so that they do need to go down to a polling center when there is a huge crowd around that area. Now, with that, you might be thinking that, hey, so much I hear about the tech stack, but how can it be more closely related to what we want to talk about? We want to talk about the vulnerable group. We want to talk about bringing inclusivity to the people, and so on and so forth. Actually, I must say that it is super relevant. Now, first of all, I think while it is not directly into for good kind of theme, but it is always the starting point for a lot of the modern project, which is really about data, right? So I'm not sure whether you're aware, in Singapore context, all the government agencies added up together, there are more than 3,000 plus digital touchpoints, big and small. But for all of these 3,000 plus touch points, at the back, there is only one analytics platform, right? And this is the analytics platform that we developed once at the central government. For any of the agencies out there, when you roll out a digital service for whatever the purpose, the agency or the website just need to add 2 lines of JavaScript code onto the website itself. Then what the website owner can get are the 5 different steps that I summarize here. First of all, is really about which are the authentic information, because if you know, one of the things government is fighting is also about fake news, and which are the legitimate source of information, so that when crisis kick in, people would not be in the panic stage. So first is a DSR, we call it a digital service register. That is the single source of truth that talks about which are the legitimate source of truth. Second, you don't talk about whether the website is good or bad or whatever. First, please make sure the website is up. So once you add the same 2 lines of JavaScript code, the website is immediately under the uptime monitoring, so that people will know that whether their services are up or down. When it's down, the service owner will immediately be triggered with an email. Thirdly, without even the user come and complain about certain thing doesn't work or whatever, we have already automated the process such that there is a WOGA inspect. So what the WOGA inspect did is that monthly they're going to automatically scan for a lot of the important parameter. The parameter can range from those very basic things like, for example, your performance, website performance, your SEO score. even to some of the more inclusivity related stuff, which I'm going to go through later. Point number 4, generate analytics. And point number 5, you know, when government operate, we cannot fly a plane, but without certain guide, right? Now things move so fast. Just imagine we are building some things even when the plane is flying in the air. We are building the wing even when the plane is flying in the air, but guided by what? One of the important parameters is really about citizen sentiment. So we have a sentiment build. Now you go to any government website, there is a smiley face at the bottom corner of the screen. Now, I'm proudly say that with the same tool of JavaScript code, agency just need to turn on their dashboard. Immediately, the citizen feedback will be collected through the smiley face straight to the agency themselves. So that is one from the data end. Next, let me talk about the inclusivity. You know, when we collected the sentiment from the people throughout the years, one of the very common asks in this country, actually, I must admit that is to my surprise. No matter how advanced Singapore is, how educated the population is, there will be, it is a truth that a lot of the people write in through these feedback tools and tell us that actually they have an issue when government only communicate to them in Singapore as the only language. In fact, they want to be reached out in more different languages. They want especially important information to be translated into a different languages. So with that, we actually have a tech stack called CrowdTask SG, and we collaborate with MCI. There is a movement called SG Translate Together. So basically, we recruit a lot of volunteers in the frame of a crowd tasking. We get teachers, we get translators to come in, volunteer, right, to help to translate the government information to 4 different languages. So how it works is that there are 2 runs. First run, we will pass by some AI tool, and then second run, we will get these translator to help to translate them, to make sure that things are okay. And the top right corner is also another interesting experiment but today is working in the tech stack as well, which is really about ethnic keyboard or writing pad. You know that in the Singapore IC for Singaporean citizens PR, there is a field ask people to fill in the ethnic name. But do you also know that more and more, based on our user research, we observe a trend that for the younger group, they don't come pre-installed on their devices an ethnic keyboard. So some of them, they tend not to key in that field of information. And after some time, if this continues, right, we are going to suffer a loss in terms of the cultural and from the ethnic kind of carry on the kind of tradition. So what we did is that we also have in our tech stack, which is the ethnic keyboard. For the minority, you do not need to install anything on your computer. It is basically a soft keyboard. You just have to press, just imagine any form. For example, you go to ICA, you try to renew your passport, renew your IC, you just click on that button. Immediately, there will be this keypad coming up. And then you're able to just directly click on this keypad or without installing anything, and you're able to enter in your ethnic language. Of course, I do want to highlight maybe, oh, sorry, I don't know why. Okay, maybe on the bottom right corner, which is really something I want to go slightly deeper, which is really about accessibility. More and more, we have this awareness of we cannot just take care of the mainstream. We also need to take care of the minorities need, those who are visually impaired, those who have issue using or they need to rely on the hearing to read out what the screen says. So I'm happy to share that in the government context, for all the 3,000 plus touch points, every month, there is an automation built up that all these websites and will be automatically scanned for accessibility. Whether the contrast is too weak, whether you do not put the alt text, for example, all those things will be automatically evaluated, right, by IT means, and then a report will be sent to the digital service owner. And in fact, if any of the agencies, the accessibility score for the digital service they are taking caring, the accessibility score is too low, then in fact, it will be flagged out to the agency administrator. So these are just some of the, I just go into some example. In fact, my main point has been delivered, just two more slides here. So this is what I meant by when I have a Gather SG as a lightweight case management system, and I'm able to and I'm able to customize them based on the different needs. So it is a lightweight tech stack, but depending on, for example, if now, basically this is also the tech stack that is today running in 53 rental flats. When the elderly are staying alone, basically we work with our SIoT, the sensor and IoT colleague. There is a button inside the unit, and when they press the button, right, my team will provide a case management system, and during the daytime, the alert, basically the button itself is also a two-way comms device. So during the daytime, the senior activity center will be able to go to the upstairs and provide the kind of care and help to those seniors staying alone. But after the office hour, when the SAC are closed, there will be a unit called the care line, which takes over this job and doing the triaging. And they will be the unit that helps to trigger the SCDF to send the ambulance down as and when needed. So far, this has been pilot island-wide over 53 blocks in Singapore. And there are now plans to really scale up to the whole of Singapore. And this is based on this particular tech stack. And at the middle column, when SGO need to engage the elderly to make sure that they are okay, because I can't send volunteer down to you to do the knock your door and ask you, shake your hand anymore because of COVID situation, then we also deploy this tech stack very quickly within 2 weeks' time, right? We set up a tool to help the silver generation office to transform the op into tele-ops to serve the seniors during the COVID situation. My last bit is really is one tech stack, but then there are altogether 9 tracks that we are serving today, ranging from a COVID track, ranging from get the seniors to quickly go for vaccination, ranging from take care of the vulnerable group, ranging from handling the grocery voucher, and in the latest edition, which the team is very busy with, is really about how can we even help to facilitate things like the integrated public service center to bring all these appeal back to the government and help them to route across different government agencies and even meet the people session potentially. So I guess that's the last of my slides. I guess to summarize in one sentence, we figure out that we can no longer just rely on the usual way of doing things. Whenever we want to do good, we start something from silo, here and there. It wouldn't work. It wouldn't be able to fulfill our role as a public service. And we have then ventured into Singapore government tech stack approach, which is proven to be useful and help us to react fast with quality in many of the situation. That's all I want to share. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you, Eyung. Yeah, so thank you for sharing this very integrative approach of tackling all these different technological challenges with all kinds of public service agencies and departments, right? So we love to know that there are so many so-called initiatives, right, addressing minority groups, vulnerable population, even language preferences going on right now in GovTech. You guys are really the institution that scale up all the ICT4Good initiatives with speed and with such large scope. Thank you, Eyung, for sharing. If you are not sharing, we probably don't know about all these things, right? Okay, now let me turn to our second speaker. We have heard from the governmental approach, I would say probably doing pretty well in terms of offering public services through technologies, right? Now we're turning to not so government-centric or focused approach represented by non-profit organizations as well as for-profit social enterprises, right? So I'd like to now introduce our second speaker, Hong Fu-Dang. Hong is the founder of FOSSASIA, an organization that strives to improve people's lives through sharing open technologies and sustainable production. She serves as a vice chair of the Open Source Committee IEEE, a board member of the Open Source Business Alliance Europe. With over a decade of open source expertise, she supports companies in their technology transition to open source and inner source development models. Her recent efforts focused on bringing open source hardware into production at scale. Okay, so Hong, the floor is yours, please.
Yes, hello. Thank you very much for the introduction. Yes, so let me try to share my screen. Can you see my screen? Great. Okay, good. Yes. One second. Yes, so I guess you cannot see me. It shows on the screen that the camera is turned off for better resolution of the screen in some way. But I hope that you can hear me well. Build a better world with open technologies. This is our slogan, and this is also something that I and many fellow FOSSASIA members believe in. So when we talk about open technologies, to us, open technologies are free and open source technology, just for the context. I want to talk briefly about our mission and what we do at FOSSASIA. Many people in the world, especially in developing countries, are struggling to obtain a good life, a good living condition, as simply as having a good air to breathe. Improving people's lives is our mission. So we want to improve people's lives by sharing open technologies, knowledge, and resources, and building a sustainable, free, and open source ecosystem. We try to achieve this goal by collaborating with local community members from around the world. And so on the screen here, you see a few members of our community. I thought maybe I touch a little bit on the scale of the organization so that you can understand how many people actually involved in building solutions that improve people's lives at FOSSASIA. We have on average 15 minutes of pull requests on our repository, 35,000 developers active on our mailing list and social media, 4,000 developers registered on the FOSSASIA GitHub org. We train 2,000 plus developers every year through our coding program. Organize online and face-to-face developer events and hackathon workshops throughout Asia. We have over 100 authors for the FOSSASIA technical blog. Our focus, so three main areas of activities at FOSSASIA. Of course, we develop open source software and hardware solution that can improve the situation for people. We organize events. So having event is the way to create a platform to bring people together, to share ideas, to share solutions, to collaborate on projects. Coding program, we try to build capacity and skill set for younger generation to empower them to create technology, to create solution for themselves. FOSSASIA is registered as a private limited company in Singapore and an office in Vietnam. However, we operate like a non-profit. We generate income to support our community work through following commercial activities as you see here. So we get income through offering software as a service, through hardware sale, through events and prevents hackathon that we organize for our partners, and offering consulting services around like software development process or open source practices. These are a few projects that we develop at FOSSASIA. So we have from Suzy AI and open source AI solution, we have our own search engine, we have educational game, we have our own desktop Linux distribution. Yes, and I just want to quickly introduce two projects, one software project and one hardware project as a representation for our work. EventYay. EventYay is an open source event management system. The reason why we will EventYay, as you know, having a platform where people collaborate is very important to work together. And we were struggling to discover a solution that combine like a call for paper, video infrastructure, communication infrastructure that freely available to the community. So we built something ourselves, and this solution has been using by not only FOSSASIA but also by many other organizations and companies outside of Asia. For instance, the Open Source Business Alliance Europe actually used our system. So just on the screen, just a snapshot of how the system look like. You can arrange your schedule. There's a lot of things that you can do. It integrated with a video system, scheduling, ticketing, and many more. But the important thing is this is open source and it's totally extendable, and it could be customized based on your need. This is a software project, and next I want to also introduce another open source hardware project. This is the Pocket Science Lab. By the name, so follow the idea of having the lab in your pocket. Why do we want to work on open hardware? So the thing is, the original idea behind this project, everything that we see now in the world, like make from electronics. So in order to empower people to build things, to make electronics, we're thinking that we should offer a device where people can make experiment, where people can learn. And this is the original idea of the Pocket Science Lab. This Pocket Science Lab is a USB power attention that a small device but come with all kind of function, oscilloscope, multimeter, logic analyzer, wave generator. So everything in one device, and it also has the capacity of interacting with different sensors. It's to measure temperature, to measure humidity. So most of the sensors that work with the Arduino boards also work with the Pocket Science Lab. What do people use it for? So you can actually develop and control robotic arms. So make experiment, create something that you can learn from. You can connect with an ultrasonic distance sensor. Or like biologists use the Pocket Science Lab as a spectrometer, where you can really check the health of your plant, or check the brightness of the fruits, like to serve for biology. So this is just a few applications how people in the community have been using the Pocket Science Lab. Yeah, and this is how it's in live action. So here you see the Pocket Science Lab already been casing, connect to your phone. We have an open source Android application and also a desktop application where you can control the app, and the kinematics of the device also available on GitHub. Beside the projects that we're doing, I mentioned a little bit earlier, we organize, we run education coding program. CodeHit.org is something that we've been running for the past 5 years to introduce open source development process and to teach young developers learn how to code and how to work in a real life projects. The outcome of this, so every year we attract about 700 to 800 participants in this program. So people will get a certificate for completing a number of pull requests. They also get financial support as reward for their work. Over the year, we have seen many students and interns from the FOSSASIA come out as a very successful developer, landing them a good position in very big tech firm or government sector. This year is a very special year for us because we're going to use this contest as a way to memorize, to remember our mentor and developer who passed away last year during the pandemic, Arif Chaman. And the events, the contest is going on right now. If you are interested, or you could share with your network and the community. The next thing that I also want to introduce to you, which is the FOSSASIA Summit. We've been running this summit for the past 13 years to bring people together to share ideas and work together on solutions. So this particular event that will happen in April from 7 to 9 will focus on open source solutions that tackle global issues. So we talk about climate change, we talk about supply chain issue, we talk about the global health issue currently going on at the moment. So I want to take the opportunity to invite you to check out our call for speakers and perhaps join us at the event online. This is a snapshot of the last the last face-to-face event in 2019, taken in Lifelong Learning Institute in Singapore. Yes, and just to sum up what my short introduction, we believe that by openly sharing knowledge and technologies, we are able to collaborate on a global scale. And you see here something that I mentioned earlier, the FOSSASIA and the work that we release to the public have been a collaboration effort for many people around the world. And this open sharing model, we believe, is the foundation for a better future, where we can use globally developed technologies like the Pocket Science Lab to produce locally. So we have the kinematics available, everyone can produce themselves. And the goal of making a positive impact to our society to improve people's lives is a very big goal. Of course, FOSSASIA alone cannot do it, but we want to be an example. We want to show people that it's possible to make something happen when you collaborate openly with members who share the same vision and beliefs. And finally, thank you very much for your attention. I also have my email in case you want to get in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Hong. Thank you. Right. So, you know, I'm always amazed by all the fantastic work done by different kinds of actors in this ICT4Good field, right? You know, Hong's organization has been working on open model, the open sharing model, right? Probably slightly different from the commercial models we often see, right? You know, there is always a community behind each of this kind of initiatives and projects, right? So I hope one of the things we can do after this workshop is to connect all these communities, right? Bring the community together. The different communities are actually doing similar things, trying to achieve similar goals as well, although probably following different ways of doing things. Speaking of you know, sharing the same goal of doing good, right? And it's time to introduce our speaker from Indonesia. You know, I have found out Nashin's organizations actually from the internet when I was searching for so-called disaster maps, right? You know, maps that are used in helping relieve the negative impacts of disasters. So my honor to now introduce Nashin Mahtani. Nashin is currently the director of Yayaysan Peta Bencana Disaster Map Foundation, a Southeast Asian-based nonprofit organization developing software infrastructures for community-led disaster co-management. She co-led the expansion of the life-saving platform from a real-time flood mapping platform serving 50 million people, already quite a lot in Indonesia, but to a multi-hazard mapping platform serving over 350 million people in Southeast Asia. In 2021, she was recognized by Forbes Asia 30 Under 30 for her contributions to the region's social issues. Nashin was also one of the 5 global semi-finalists for the prestigious Global Citizen Prize, Cisco Youth Leadership Award in 2019. She was listed as a Southeast Asian woman leader by YSEALI in 2020 and recognized as a woman innovator by the Information Society Innovation Fund in 2018. So we're now ready to hear from Nashin to share about her journey of developing the Disaster Map Foundation from an Indonesia-based organization to a Southeast Asian regional organization. Nashin, please.
Thank you so much, Eyung, for the very kind introduction and also for the time to be here today. And thank you to everyone to join us and to the other panelists as well. It's such a pleasure to be among this group. We were also happy to be at one of FOSSASIA's summits, and it's truly one of the most amazing gatherings of people. So I'll just share a little bit about the work that we're doing in Southeast Asia, where we're building also open source tools for climate adaptation and humanitarian aid. I just share my screen. Can you see this? Okay, so to start, I just want to share a little bit of context first. And I start with these 2 images, which are both images of the central business district of Jakarta, which historically never experienced flooding. And we see in both these images that they're completely flooded. And what I want to point out about this is that the reason for both of these events was an infrastructure failure. In both years, there was a portion of the canal wall that broke, resulting in flooding of in areas that were historically never flooded before. And what's really important to point out about that is that no matter how much computation we have, no matter how much predictive modeling, nothing could have predicted these events. Nothing could have predicted that the walls would break at these points and then flood these particular neighborhoods. And what we're experiencing with climate change is a greater intensity of weather. So in terms of the flood, as it's more rain falling in a shorter period of time. And what that means is that the infrastructures that we have in our cities that are supposed to contain that water aren't able to handle this increased intensity of the climate. They can't keep up with the speed at which the climate is changing. And so as a result, they are bursting and breaking unexpectedly, which causes sudden and unexpected disasters. And so this really requires us to think about different forms of infrastructure for climate adaptation that are far more flexible and adaptive. And so we know that during a disaster, information is the most important resource. It's critical to make timely decisions about safety and response, both on a personal level, but also for government agencies and for humanitarian groups who are distributing aid. They need to know how the situation is changing and in order to understand how they can get to certain places or which places are in need of help. And while rapidly urbanizing cities like Jakarta or Manila are often thought to be data scarce, this perhaps comes from an idea that there isn't a lot of formal data, but if we look in other areas, we see that there is actually a lot of data there. It just exists in different forms. And in fact, the region that we're in, the ASEAN region, has 100 million more smartphones than people. And so we see that there actually is a lot of data there. It just exists in different forms than we may be traditionally used to. And so as we see in this image here, which is a very typical Indonesian image, it's also a very typical image in the Philippines, is that even when people are standing in the flood, they are taking selfies, they are sharing information. And if millions of residents all over the city are sharing this information about evacuation routes, about community efforts, and all of these posts that they're sharing have, most of them have photos and all of them are geotagged, they are tied to a specific coordinate, then that actually provides a data source of unprecedented resolution to help response and coordination. And so our question was, how do we turn this into actionable information that allows people to make informed and evidence-based decisions? And so instead of passively data mining, our team developed an open source software called Cognicity. And how it works is that it actively engages with residents to confirm their situation. And to briefly illustrate this, our software is designed to listen for specific keywords on social media posts. So for example, here, if the post contains the word flood, then we send an automatic reply. We have chat bots that will send these automatic replies saying, "Hi, I'm DisasterBot," and asks the users if they would like to confirm their situation and submit a report. And if the user responds, they are guided through a few simple steps to submit a report, which includes confirming their location, adding a little bit of detail about the disaster. So in this image, it's the flood height. And then they have an option to add a photo and additional free text description. And as soon as they submit that, in less than 0.01 seconds, that report is plotted on a real-time map. And this is a map that's, it's web-based, it's free and accessible for anyone to use, and it's designed to be extremely data light. And so this is a method of crowdsourcing that allows us to reach millions of users, allows us to pull information from street level, from the people who know the situation best because they are experiencing that. And on the screen is a sample of some of the types of reports that we receive. So people are sharing information about broken infrastructure, or even like if there's a blackout, they're also reporting that there's a blackout because the pole has fallen, or if there's a particular need that they have, they're sharing that as well. And then we also work with government agencies who are monitoring the map in real time in order to understand and respond to resident needs. And then we've also developed a mechanism for them to input formal information onto the map. And so in this way, we now have this two-way transparent information sharing, which has improved real-time coordination. It's a way for the government agencies to much more quickly share information with residents who are in need of that information, and for residents to share information of what they need as well. And as a result, the government agencies that we've been working with say that it has significantly allowed them to increase the speed of response because they're able to more immediately and more effectively allocate rescue and resource efforts to the places that really are in need of it. But I think more importantly, it allows everyone to more equally participate in decision-making and resource management in their communities, especially during crisis events. We say that it has democratized decision support because instead of concentrating decision-making in a small handful of people sitting in a control room, effectively what this does is it makes that information available on everybody's mobile phone. So everyone has access to that same information and can participate in this cooperative process to both self-organize within their community. So they're not having to wait for external response before being able to help themselves and their community members, but then they can also facilitate greater coordination among several sectors of the city. And then fundamentally, our method is completely arises out of a method of collaborative co-research with the widest variety of stakeholders and user groups, from government agencies to academics and activists and people living along the river, along the volcano, in earthquake-prone areas. The parameters of the software arise completely out of a process of co-research that, you know, out of the conversations we have with all of these groups, that's what informs the design. And iterative process. So it's constantly being updated based on the feedback we have and based on the conversations, seeing how the perceptions of risk are changing or how the hazards are changing every year. We also operate in an open framework, so all of the data is open and it's being pulled by several other agencies to complement their existing data sets and to support them in their efforts for response. But it's also, besides real-time response, it's also being used by other agencies such as NASA and the Indonesian Space Agency, as well as companies to both plan for the safety of their employees, but then also for research and future planning purposes as well. And so it started as a real-time flood map in Jakarta in 2014. Now we are a multi-hazard map for all of Indonesia. So it's for several hazards as well, not just for flooding. And we have a pilot in the Philippines, and by the beginning of next year in January, we will be at a national scale in the Philippines as well. And the reason that we've been able to scale so wide on an extremely small budget and a very small team is because of the time and energy that has gone over the years in developing this as an open source software that was designed from first principles to be transferable by geographic region, by hazard type, and by language. And so right now it's already being adapted by several groups across the world, including in Vietnam, Hong Kong, and India right now as well, and to address a variety of urban challenges not limited to disasters. And we're currently working on building this network of users who can use the software as a free tool to reappropriate the data in social media and use it for forms of urban coordination that are really fundamental for allowing residents to work together. And so that's it for a brief overview of what we're doing here, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thanks, Nashin. You know, really, really impressive with a small budget and a small team like that, right? You know, the map has been so useful and in so many different parts of the world, right? We would love to hear more about how you managed to do that during this discussion. Now, it's my great pleasure to introduce our last speaker. So Dr. Xie Dong is actually another scholar practitioner. Dr. Xie is currently Secretary General of NGO20.cn, a Shenzhen registered nonprofit organization, co-founded by University of Science and Technology of China and MIT's New Media Action Lab as early as in 2009. So NGO 2.0 is a pioneer in promoting ICT4Good in China as a national organization that supports Chinese NGOs through information and communication technologies. NGO 2.0 builds NGO data sets, drafted digital maps, developed 2.0 tools, provided training to more than 3,000 NGOers, and ran hackathons. Dr. Xie, other than being working for NGO 2.0, is also an associate professor teaching at the Department of Technological Communication, USTC. Okay, so Dr. Xie, it's your turn.
Okay, nice to meet you all. I will share my screen. Okay. Can you see my screen? Okay. My organization is NGO 2.0. Our slogan is Tech for Good. We are established in 2009, and we co-sponsored by MIT and USTC. Our mission is to promote a cross-border development of tech for good in China, and we are we define ourselves practitioner and innovator of Tech for Good in China. This is our founders. Jin Wang is the MIT professor, and Rongting Zhou is our USTC professor and the dean of department of our department. Our slogan is Tech for Good, but we think the tech is two-way. First, the tech we preferred is to ICT and ICT4Good. Now we use the concept of Tech for Good because some internet company such as Tencent and ByteDance use the Tech for Good, and the Tencent slogan is changed to Tech for Social Good. We think technology includes three aspects. One is information, such as hardware and software. The other is communication, especially in internet communication and new media. And the third is design technology, which not only refers to aesthetic design, for example, user interface and visual design, but also includes design thinking. So our mission is promote the cross-border development of Tech for Good in China. Our name is NGO 2.0. So our 2.0 is from Web 2.0. It means the internet, open, free, participate, innovate. And particularly for NGOs, 2.0 means network and crowdsourcing. So we can see the two-way tech and good. First, we use tech to empower NGOs. So we empower the organizations with new media and internet technologies. Second, we offer professional ICT practitioners to a stack to change the world. This is our vision. We have four. One is Tech for Good advocating, and two is infrastructure improving. Three is skill developing, and the fourth is scope enhancing. You can see our project structure. We have also four. The first is elementary training. We can see the detail. Elementary training. In 2009, we carried out our new media workshop. The target group is grassroots NGOs in south and west of China. The project aims is improve the internet and the social media skills of NGOs. And improve the efficiency of management and project execution, and promote online collaboration between NGOs. So you can see some courses as an example. First, we have social media communication strategy and collaborating work. Then we offer some tools to NGOs. Then we use the example and such as crowdfunding, storytelling. Now more than 80 new media workshops have been held, and in all over China we cover 3,000 domestic NGOs. This is our new media workshop. And from last year, we have Tech4Good mentor cultivation because we have a new media workshop about 3 times 1 year. So we want to expand our new media shop. So the Tech4Good mentor cultivation, the target group is NGO 2.0 partners. So we present trainers certificate to media workshop trainers, then courses and the Tech4Good concept online and offline. This is offline workshop. Support the development of NGOs with social media and the internet tools. But we think this workshop is quite difficult because the trainers insist for about half a year. And the third is fundraising service. We can see just this year achievement of this year in Tencent Lejuan platform, the biggest fundraising platform in China. This year we serviced 3 foundations and we raised more than 18 million yuan for more than 100 NGOs. And these 5 years we raised for all about more than 80 million yuan. Second is our innovation projects. We have a design thinking salon for NGOs, but we have another forms, hackathon. Hackathon is now the main forms. Hackathon is initiated linking NGOs and maker groups, collecting public welfare leads to innovative solutions and promoting cross-border development of Tech4Good through the concept and practice of co-design. You can see this. We are in Tsinghua University. We are engaged in making a robot to plant so automatically in desert. And now we have more than 20 sessions. And this project is Future Village. It is to our government. So it is some PPTs. You can see some. We use co-design from MIT Fab Lab to get the project. So you can see in Yangya village, village Yangya. Village Yangya is about 100 kilometers far from the nearest city in deep mountain. But we have one project in this village. You can see in technology in power, there is smart. We offer smart beehive and sales boosting for Kuaishou, Douyin in ByteDance. And we have some influencer marketing. And in Science Enlighten, we have village survey and youth maker camps, and we build the first fab lab in village lab in China, and the third is a country library. The village built a lakeshore studio, and some makers makes cyber Yang in internet. And the next is academics research and networking. So you can see some summit and forum and exhibition. Recently, we have made great efforts to promote the establishment of Tech4Good branch of China Computer Federation. And there have been corresponding sub-forums as the previous 3 China National Computer Congress. So we have others such as Tech4Good Summit, Tech4Good Forum. And our organization have some supportive products such as Tourbox. Tourbox, it is an internal tour aggregation platform for NGOs with its own internet and technical attributes. It is like Wikipedia for NGOs tours. It is our websites, and we have 7 times Tech4Good research. We have the internet use and organizational communication capability of grassroots organization in mainland China. And next, I will discuss with some questions. First, what is good? In our organization, we have take good from narrow to wide. Good does not only point to NGOs. Its radiation covers everything, including medical, education, agriculture, environments, business design. In China, now we have a wave of tertiary distribution and common prosperity. In some cases, we think good is social responsibility. Therefore, we have brought technology enterprise with a sense of corporate social responsibility, especially internet enterprise, into our team. You can see some concept such as Tech4Good, ICT4Good, Design4Good, Data4Good. The major difference between Tech4Good and the traditional public welfare for us, we think the difference is in their model. Traditional public welfare generally can only concentrate resources to serve a small group of improved rich group. But we think Tech4Good is able to transcend the limitation of time, space, and the national boundaries, and prompt more people through the nature of the internet. We can see the same pages. We have 2 ways. One is tech, especially internet or technology enterprise, because now the internet company is very big and they have great influence in China. And in the other hand, good, we can see it, NGOs is broadly in China. Now its quantity is about more than 800,000. Now you can see some partners because I want to make sense with partners and main actors. So you can see our organization in this year is about 12 years, and this is all kind of partners. But in these pages, we have the 9 ways for every actors or partners. The first of all is government. Includes Ministry of Civil Affairs and so on. And the second, now we see the first academics. Our founders is MIT and USTC, and we have make partners with Communication University of China, Tsinghua University, and this is Central Academy of Fine Arts because we demand for design resources. And the second is alliances. You can see China Internet Philanthropy Summit. It is held by mainly by Tencent, and China Information Technology Charity Alliance, and mainly by government, and varieties of foundations, China Foundation, Dunhe Foundation, Narada Foundation, Tencent Foundation, Mana Data Foundation, and abroad foundation, such as Ford Foundation. And the main partner is platform, such as Tencent, ByteDance, Alibaba, Xiaomi, and so on. And this is SMB for good. It is some business or a small company only served for NGOs, such as Linxi, Puyiyun, Qingliu, and so on. And the biggest of them is about 60 people. And the sixth is tech cooperation. ThoughtWorks, GoData, Tawa, InkLife, because they of some services of their to NGOs, and seventh is community, and the eighth is US NGOs as models, especially N10 and TechSoup. We have collected, and this is the overview map of Tech4Good in China. Our team has developed it for weeks, and this is a draft. We haven't finished it. You can see in this map, overview map, you can see NGOs. This is foundation and industry support organizations, and this is alliances and technology application organizations. The orange is enterprise and the company. So this is SaaS, this is PaaS, and this is YaaS. It is Adi and Tencent. And the third power, we think it is very important. It is internet fundraising information platform by the government. So now we have about more than 30 platform. It is our draft. You can see SaaS, PaaS, YaaS. So this is Tencent and Ali. We can. I want to discuss how they work together. I have the platform role of technology application organization. First of all, we talk about the stakeholders.
Dr. Xie, can I interrupt now? We are running out of time. Maybe can we wrap within a few minutes?
Okay. So this is working with the internet companies. We use their places and influence and their faculty as lecturers, and we held a hackathon in their places, and they directly give money. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Xie. I believe you have already started addressing the questions we are supposed to ask during the Q&A session. So I think we're now ready to open the floor for questions. You know, feel free to type in your questions in the chat box, or you can just raise your hands, your virtual hands or your physical hands to basically signal that you have a question to ask. Well, for when you are probably warming up to the questions, I do have quite a few questions that I would love to ask to our panelists. I think we have perspectives from the government, very capable government. We also have perspectives from the less so-called smaller, but smaller but also bigger in a sense that in terms of the global reach it has, right? I guess the so-called elephant in the room, but also not spoken perspective is the commercial entities, right? Basically the big tech firms. So I'd like to ask a question about how do you see maybe some of the differences between the way you build technologies or deploy the technologies compared to these commercial entities. Some of you, Dr. Xie mentioned, collaboration or partnership with platforms, like commercial platforms. But will that also be maybe competition or even, competing products, right? With the commercial entities. So I hope to hear from you about this so-called commercial relationship, right? For doing good, for doing social good. Maybe I can start from Eyung. Eyung, how about your GovTech perspective?
Okay, thank you. Maybe I just give a very short answer. I honestly think it's pretty aligned, because if you look at how the technology today move, right, it's all along the line of like how can we Dockerize, for example, how can we make things more scalable, how can we be able to codify certain things into code, and so that we can redeploy, faster, easier, and even cheaper and stuff like that. So those are the things that I think the whole commercial is driving towards. And for us, be it I'm from government, I'm from non-profit perspective, I think that direction, at least from government perspective, I don't think that deviate too much, because that kind of capability will help me to be able to faster, easier to do good. Yeah, that'll be my answer. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Eyung. Sorry to press, but all these technologies built at GovTech, are they going to be somehow made available to the market? Will there be any profitable potential out of these technological developments?
I must say that it's definitely possible. In fact, it's more than possible. It has already started happen. So if I can quote one super recent example, would be the Trace Together. In fact, it has already open source. And in fact, a few governments in the world has already start discussing with us based on the open source repo. And then what are some of the things, how can we further customize? We already ran into many different discussions with many different companies in the world, many different even government in the world. Of course, there are some commercial interests as well, but basically, we totally respect that. When we are part of the open source community, then the good that we can do will be even a greater. 1 + 1 not equals to 2, but equals to 3.5. Things like that. Thank you.
Thanks, Eyung. Yes. Maybe now let's turn to the social enterprises and NPOs. Hong, how do you see commercial entities, or profitable goals? Right?
Yes, so I totally agree with Eyung about the alignment in terms of technology development. So agile development, software development method, a lot of DevOps approach like modern development are similar in terms of commercial sector or in terms of communities and not for profit technology development. However, there's also differences. For instance, in a lot of commercial setting, they of course have a much bigger resources, a much bigger team to contribute and to develop their products. They have also more resources to do testing and development compared to not profit or just like open source community. So this is the biggest differences that I could see. Another thing that I also want to say, why a lot of technologies in the world even come from commercial sector, they adopt a lot of existing open source solution being built by the global community. However, many of the commercial sector, they use open source, they adopt open source, but they do not release the solution back to community. So it's like it's a one stream intake. However, in contrast to us or the organization of Nashin, we appreciate the effort from the community. At the same time, we want to contribute back. So we want to continue to grow the ecosystem. Of course, not 100% of commercial sector are like this. A lot of companies also try to release their scope, try to collaborate with the community. But I hope to see more practice like this, to see more corporate actors to be more open. That a lot of problem in the world can be solved by working together. Like Eyung just said, that the trace together. We don't need hundreds of governments to develop the same solution to tackle a similar issue. If people can work together, share solution, they will save a lot of resources for the world. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Hong. Nashin, you have anything to share? How you managed to run the whole thing with such a small budget?
Yeah, I think it's very much because it's been developed as an open source tool like that. Because anytime someone contributes to that, all of us benefit from it. And so, as Phuc was saying, this is the same challenge we've seen in the environments we're working in is when a corporate firm takes an open source software and doesn't share back their developments, it just hinders progress for everybody. But when we're able to add to, like, all contribute to the same thing, it really helps us not duplicate efforts. And definitely, like, even in the platform we're working in, disaster management is going to be different in every context. Risk perception is different, but there are a lot of things that we can share across the region. And this is exactly what we saw when, like, in 2017, there was a group in Vietnam who adopted our software, who we didn't have a relationship with before. They found the software in a GitHub. They used it to develop their own risk map, but then they were able to add in features that we hadn't solved yet. And then they approached us because they were having challenges implementing the project. They were able to add a technical feature, but in terms of, like, the implementation at working with communities on the ground and getting people to use it, they were having challenges with that. So then the software became a mechanism for, like, knowledge sharing that extended beyond the technology. And it was about how do we work with multiple stakeholders, and that sort of experience is really enriching. And, like, we in the Philippines, it's like we continue to see that. And I think that's allowed us to scale is because of all of these contributions. So even though we're a small core team, like the NGO is a small team, the project is really built because of so many collaborators across so many years. And, like, that's what's allowed it to grow, because of the contributions of a much larger group than exist within our own organization. So we don't want to work alone in a silo. We want to work with people who have different expertise than our own to complement that.
Thanks, Nashin. Thanks, Nashin. You know, I guess I hear you that the open source movement needs contributions, right? Needs contributions, not just taking away from the open sources softwares, but also, you know, giving back to the open source community. Dr. Xie, you seem to, your organization seems to have a rather pleasant relationship with the commercial platforms, right? You mentioned Tencent, ByteDance, Alibaba. So how do you see your collaboration with these commercial partners? When you use, like, tools built by different actors, you know, I know some tools like Lingxi is a small business, right? Definitely Tencent is much bigger than Lingxi, but how do you treat your very multifaceted relationship with different kinds of actors? Do you, for instance, do you help Tencent to promote their products in NGOs, or do you help Lingxi to promote their products?
I think they are all in the ecosystem, and just now I talk about working with the internet companies. Take Tencent and ByteDance for example. First, we use their influence to hold activities. NGOs will like to participate in activities in such companies. At the same time, they will also drive employees in the enterprise to see these activities. And the second is to invite the internet companies, big companies, employees to lectures and volunteers. These people are usually opinion leaders in the technology industry and have mastered many new methods of the internet, including the three technologies we call the design and the communication and the internet. The third two to drive the internet complex. We have some hackathon which requires the employees of enterprise to participate in directly. Generally, first, it is meet the needs of NGOs and then take 2 days to make solution. However, because it is in the enterprise and has executive power, the solution can usually continue to implement it. For example, we have in ByteDance barrier free cinema for blinds. Fourth, it is directly they have give direct money, but like Lingxi, it is the service provider, direct service provider for NGOs. So I think they are the two elements of the ecosystem.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Xie. I guess you're saying the way you work with the internet platforms might be to tap into their manpower, right? Not just to use their products, right? Maybe their products are not specifically designed for the NGOs, and Lingxi's products might be more directly related to NGOs operations. So thank you for the answer. Maybe I should check with the rest of the people who are still here. Pablo just turned off his video. Pablo, you have any questions for our panelists? I think that you guys are all working on similar challenges. Pablo, you're muted. Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, sorry. I guess you can hear me now, right? Can you hear me?
Yeah, a little bit soft. Your voice is a little bit soft. Can you increase the voice?
I think it should work better now.
Still not very loud, but you know, we can try our best. If it's the maximum volume you have, we'll try our best to catch.
I will try to speak louder. So first, I would like to thank you for your talks. They were quite impressive, the projects that you are contributing to. So some of you made mentions to participatory design, design thinking. I remember system design through co-research was also presented in. So I would like to know like how you handle diversity when doing participatory design, like how, even that you allow many people to participate in the design of those civic tech systems, like how you guarantee like different perspective, like a diverse pool of views is incorporated into the design phase. Because well, I see that these were great projects, so I really want to learn from you. Thank you.
Thanks, Pablo. You know, maybe I repeat his question for the purpose of the recording. Pablo asked about participatory design, right? So basically, how do you incorporate participation from various kinds of actors? Maybe not just the technologists, right? You know, those who develop the technologies. So I guess you all mentioned that in your talks, but maybe we want to know a bit more about how so-called non-technologists or even the users themselves are incorporated in the design process. Maybe I start with Eyung again, following the sequence.
Yeah, thank you. Again, let me try to give a very short answer, but I think this is essentially a very good question and is exactly important. So we have a saying that today, whatever tech side of the house is doing is just, you know, we always have this word ops tech integration. It's always the tech wrap around ops and definitely not the other way around. So because of that kind of mindset, we already have a working model within the government that we borrow a few, many good practice from the industry. For example, we borrow like a service journey industry. We always have this service blueprint before we implement any system. We need to do enough of a user research to make sure that we formulate the so-called service blueprint. We know that who are the actors. We know that what are the interfaces to the public officers and even internally. And what really drive this service blueprint are definitely not the tech people, are definitely the ops people, because often than not, if you ask a researcher to really think for 1 week how to improve the system design, how to improve the ops, nothing beats you just go and talk to an officer on the ground who has been working there for, let's say, 5 years. They normally have a lot of good stuff to share with you because they are the real person that is running the ops. They have the best idea. So OPSEC integration is definitely something that we will strictly abide to. Right. Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Yang. So maybe Hong, how do you open source software? How do you incorporate various points of view in open source development?
Yeah, so like many open source projects, of course, research, user research and development is not our biggest strength. It requires a lot of resources in order to put into research work. However, I think the way how open source project develop is to create a model where the input from different stakeholders can be taken and turned into like a roadmap. So for instance, what is a good practice of open source development? I think Nashin also mentioned earlier. She opened her project very early from the start to anticipate early feedback. And of course, not every open source project is structured in the same way. But if you can take a look at a different repository, there is a guidance how the community can provide their feedback, and some project even provide a highlight how would they prioritize what to work on next. So this is something that that open source project like ours doing. We try to establish a channel, an in-tech channel that allow people to provide feedbacks and show them, like, be transparent about your roadmap, what you want to develop next, and be open to this. But in another academic setting or corporation, so I see a lot of practices like user journey mapping workshop. You invite different stakeholders to come in, and I think that Pablo here in the academic, you already know this, so I think it's a standard way of approaching. But it's of course challenging to organize this kind of workshop for open source community where people working from various locations, also not on the same time zone, but we can, how do you say, scale down this approach in a different way that allow people, provide people a structure way to share their inputs. Yeah.
Thank you, Hong. Right. Nashin, you have, or Yuan, you have something to respond? Okay, Nashin, well, maybe I invite Nashin to answer this question. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, our process is entirely co-research. So like we, the smallest group of people we work with are technology experts. Most of our work and our efforts are really in working with community groups and like different stakeholders. So in Indonesia, everybody experiences disasters. It's of course to varying degrees. And so we take this into consideration. We work with those in the most vulnerable communities. And then, but as well with as many groups as we can, and it includes like businesses, and it includes first responders and NGOs. So like we're working with the Red Cross, we're working with just any variety of people. And sometimes it's in these co-research workshops where like we bring people together and try and it's hardly ever about the technology. It's about if it's about the disaster, it's like, oh, how do they currently experience it? What are they using to make decisions? What are the challenges they are facing? And it's never like a straightforward question and answer. It's more of a storytelling, being open to like listen to each of their experiences and creating an environment where they feel comfortable sharing that. So sometimes it might not be in a workshop where we bring everyone together. Like it's a mix of approaches. So often it's like you sit on a side of a volcano for like 4 hours with the group, and like in the 4 hours there's like 10 minutes of something they say, and like that informs the full design of the project. But like that 4 hours is necessary, and it's one of the biggest things I think not a lot of people realize is the largest part of working on this project is building and maintaining the relationships as much as it is building and maintaining the code, and those work hand in hand together. And so, yeah, that's a little how we do it here.
Thank you. Great to know that 4 hours conversation generates 10 minutes insights, right? But that's already great news, right? Let me move to Dr. Xie. Dr. Xie, you mentioned that NGO 2.0 organized the Fab Labs, hackathons, right? How do you then decide who to include in those Fab Labs and hackathons? Are they have to be technology experts, or do you invite all kinds of people to join?
Okay. We can use the example just now. I mentioned the project Future Village. The Future Village project is based on the Fab Lab model, but we have varieties of partners from university about design, and some makers from the internet companies with designer and software engineering and the product management, product manager, and some from the communication company. But in the Fab Lab model, we think we think the user, the villagers, as the main body, and we think the non-physically laboratory as the carrier. It is social development oriented. The villager, the villager is many of the villages is elder or the little boy. In some future village projects, we want, or we get some graduate from the school to with the creator conceive. Then we design the future village together to turn the village into a livable, ecological, sustainable, scientific, and humanistic village. So in this project, I call it we call it design for good and ICT4Good.
Okay, I hear you. So villages, I know many of the villages are empty, just left with the elderly and very young children. All the middle age or young, adults have already gone out of the village for work, right? So
we demand some 返乡青年 from government.
Okay. So you asked some of those adults who left the village to come back and contribute to your Fab Lab. So, okay, got it. So you, at least these people probably will bring different perspectives as someone who both know the village and know the world outside of the village. You know, I'm going to stop there, but I think I completely agree with Pablo that participatory design, or how to include people's participation effectively, but also with an eye on social justice, is a very pressing problem facing all technological development right now. We are seriously behind time. But any other final questions before we conclude this session? Well, I do have one final question. I really hope every panelist can help to answer. You know, that's a very selfish question from, from the perspective of academics, right? We as academics have been doing research on this subject. Dr. Xie and both Dr. Xie and Pablo are doing research, right? But I guess we all feel the inadequacy of just observing, analyzing, explaining, but without acting, right? So that pushes many of the academics into the field, trying to figure out, you know, how we can facilitate actions in the field, right? But I don't know, you know, I have to say I learned so much from Pablo and NGO 2.0. You know, but what roles can we play? You know, if there isn't a role for academics to really play in the field, I don't think we need to trouble people to always scream to get included, right? So I want to ask our practitioners, you know, do you see a role for academics to play in the field? If there is one, which kind of role? If there's not, that's perfectly fine as well, just say it, right? So maybe again, I start from Eyung, right? Eyung, do you see any good things that can come up from the academics?
Okay, maybe first set the context a little bit. I don't know whether you guys are aware, but you know, at least if you say in Singapore, you know that for all the Go Where movement, support Go Where, must Go Where, and all the Go Where thing, actually the mastermind behind was an ex NUS master student, right? It is
wow.
the kind, it is from it's from NUS. So it is the kind of research background that that really help us to go deeper into some of the things. So if not, typically what we, okay, I think let me just generalize by calling us a practitioner, but a lot of time for us, we will stop at the level of what works, what doesn't work. And I maybe I won't repeat this route again. I'll try another route and stuff like that. But my main motivation to set up this team is really to implement more things to benefit more people. I think that part is there, but I think the kind of that we went in will definitely be quite limited. So in the sense, along the way, when I have someone with a research background in the team, I sort of benefited a lot, right? So for example, when we talk about assisted living, the kind of the care model that being designed, you cannot imagine there are, even we'll talk about a very simple button. Let me see, I have it here. Maybe I don't have it here. A simple button that is placed in a assisted living flat for the senior to press on. We can come up with 4 different iterations, and every time, just now, I think when we mentioned like we need to go back to the seniors to get them to participate, to tell us what works, what doesn't work, and stuff like it. It is that kind of persistencies that go deep into the whole design of the care model, right? From the button design, hardware design, to how the data flow, to which organization should come in. And along the way, there will be some surprising findings, like, for example, some of the family member might not want you to easily trigger them for anything that related to their parents staying alone. They might not want that. They prefer to have, for example, a care partner, you know, in the loop and stuff. So all these kind of things, we really benefit a lot when we have someone with research background in the play. And I definitely think that we can do a lot more than that, because especially when we deal with these minority group, if you heard recently, government also announced that they want to make a nearby NUS area, the whole Queenstown, into a pilot, right, for assisted living technology. I think that is something motivated us a lot. And that actually gives a lot room into this more deep dive research into how things can really work. It is an area very new to even for us working for a few years to deal with all these minority and how to support them. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Yang. It's good to know that you think research-based thinking, right? Or we're talking about design thinking, research thinking, or academic thinking can contribute to your work as well. Maybe I continue asking this question to Hong. Hong, do you think academics can play a role in open source software and hardware movement?
Yes, so the answer is definitely yes. So, I think that everyone can play a role. It depends on how big of the goal you want to be in. But doing good, it doesn't like the job of an individual. Everyone in the society can participate, and I think with the background of research and your expertise in terms of data analysis, and also like you have a chance to get more input with the sector that maybe open source project do not have a chance to interact with, and this is will be a huge values for open source project. Like your contribution in the academic sector would be more than welcome. Here in Germany, we also work together with Fraunhofer Institute and university in Germany, where they have to validate our product. So they have their research lab, they have their test lab where we work together with them to do the prototype for the Pocket Science Lab. So we actively work together with academy, and we see that there is a good collaboration between like different sectors. So in order to participate, so the academic sector are more than welcome, talk to us and be more engaged in what you are doing right now. You reach out to different players in the sector. At the same time, I would also hope that like the work that you do is very valuable. It would be great if more and more education and this academic sector release their work, so that or make it more accessible to everyone in the community. That would be great.
Thank you, Holmes, for the very nice words. Right? We really hope that we can provide such kind of networking channels. Nashin, you want to comment on that?
Sure, yeah. Actually, the project started as a research project. So this was a university research project that has since developed into its own foundation. So definitely, like from its very origins, it was a research project. I'm very grateful to the founders who realized that as they were doing the research, it would actually be useful to implement, and not so they took it on themselves to implement it, to start a field office, to implement it while it was a research project. And I think maybe that's not a step a lot of people take that I think could be very useful. Is if something is seen as useful, then it can be implemented. It doesn't have to exist in one space solely. It can exist in multiple spaces. And since then, research it's our approach. Even though it's not affiliated with one university anymore, we are an NGO. We come from multiple disciplines, everyone in our team, everyone has a research-based approach. And we also work with universities, both in Indonesia and across the world, in continuing to build this and writing papers, but they feed into each other. And I think that's what's important, is that it isn't existing separately. It isn't doing research that then exists in a silo, but like how can that research feed back to the project in the same way that the project feeds a lot of research? So I think that loop is an important one to keep going and sharing back whatever is absorbed.
Okay, Nashin, thank you. My first time to know that it started from a research project in the university. This reminds me of our first keynote speech on how we can mobilize and educate the students in the universities, right, to continue maybe carrying out their student projects and build them into real ICT for good solutions. Okay, Dr. Xie, right, you are both academic and a practitioner. You know, I guess you will say good words about academics' contribution.
You talk about I think you talk about a lot of, so I have two opinions. First of all, our organization has a academic background. Now we will call us the #1 Tech for Good organization in China, because from 2008, others organization Tech for Good disappears because they have not enough fund, and our NGO 2.0 is based on MIT and USTC. We can and my laboratory can offer the students and faculty and funds. And my two opinions. First, the worship in China, the worship and recognition of Chinese people's culture to academia makes scholars have better access and communication as sponsors. So in why we begin with some workshop. I have the easier beginner than others, and another is it is easier to attract the attention of government. Concentrate the voice and the demands of groups and affect policies. And now we can get the central government, and we have the great connected with Tencent and ByteDance and Alibaba. So that's because of our academic background.
I see. So in China, first, it's a little bit more sustainable to have academic institutions to house, you know, organize.
It is a resource.
Cheaper, right? Second, you know, academic, at least in China, maybe academics are closer. Their voices are closer, maybe to the government's ears, so they may be able to get to government and policy makers a bit easier than the rest of the actors, right? So yeah, I hear your answer. Oh, well, that's a great answer, but maybe very particular to the Chinese context. But we're glad to know we can learn from each other. Well, really, very, very thankful to all the panelists for staying here for long. You know, I hope this session will be not only informative for the people who are right here, but also later on when we disseminate it, you know, on the social media channels, we will really get your voices out. So from now on, I think I'm going to stop the recording